Good Tuesday, everyone. Oh, I'm missing lights and I got distracted by an errant fly that was buzzing around the office. And boy, nothing, few things get me more distracted than that. Anyway, welcome to another edition of Together We Write. Um, my name is Chris. I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. And every week I live stream just some basic goings on in my classes, trying to cover a lot of ground, usually focusing on one or two heavier topics that we're working through in my one of my classes. So oftentimes they don't converge, sometimes they do at random moments. This week we're talking about images, and I think at least two of my classes we are either covering images like a week ago or currently. So working with images and using them in, say, your whether you're in, say, my professional writing class, you use images for a variety of reasons. But even as we are going into, using images for the same purpose in the Intro to Tech and Professional Writing course, oftentimes the images are used the same way. We're going to talk about how to add them to a Word document, always fun, and how to caption them properly, and as well as how to include them in a markdown document. So if you're in my professional and technical writing course, last week we talked about markdown. And in a couple weeks, we're actually going to look at HTML. I wasn't sure we were going to do that at first, but given the good quality of work, and everyone seems to have gotten Markdown pretty nailed down. So we're going to jump into HTML in a little bit. But working with images is also important to think about, and this is an area I have not quite thought through yet. But also with the emergence of AI, like I spend a lot of time talking about AI, but not as much using images because, quite frankly, it's just not a use that I use it for. In a pinch, I've certainly used it and I cite it accordingly, and you can pretty much tell that it's AI. I've used it in the past when it was when it was even sloppier. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I should pull up an example that I used several years ago or a couple years ago. But we'll talk about also where to find actual, for sure, legal images that can be used. And they're licensed under a Creative Commons license, or those images that are in the public domain, and where we can find those. So we're covering a lot of ground, but really just focusing on images. All right. So, actually, coincidentally, just something just came up, made me think about a my initial career post college was as a photo editor and working for a global print organization. And so my job was basically sitting there working with Photoshop for 12 hours a day. Oftentimes, usually 7 p.m. I work third shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it's a lot of time to be working on photos. And um, if you ever want to know more about that interesting career, um, yeah, we can chat sometime. Anyway, cut short the tangents and try to get through all of this content. Let me just make sure. Okay. All right. Here in glorious Green Bay, we are, I thought we were due for a lot of rain today, but it's actually pretty sunny out. Although it's predicted to be freezing overnight, at least we're in my neck of the woods, just a little bit north of here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Getting a little too distracted. Sure, there we go. So there's my desktop. Enjoy Let's open a nice blank Word document. So, first things first, I think it's really important to look at how we embed images and just to show you some of the ways that we can implement images into a written document without causing too much havoc. And it's really hard to avoid that sometimes, to be perfectly honest, but we're gonna. Um, Word has gotten a lot better. Let me just get to my Lipsum generator here. Give me give me a few paragraphs. So let's see. Here we go. So if you remember back in I think I mentioned this in a previous session. We used to call this Greek. I don't know. We don't really talk about it anymore, but it's basically just this. You're using, it's probably Latin. Let me look at this. I'm interested. Uh, Lorem ipsum is simply dummy text in the printing and typesetting industry. You would use this for basically a placeholder so you could figure out, okay, what's this document going to look like once all the content comes in? Oftentimes, the designer will be putting a page together or a document, and the writer is doing separate content, and that usually comes, and you do this back and forth trying to get things working. And this is classic Latin. Okay, roots in a piece of classical Latin literature from 45 BC, making it over 2,000 years old. I want to remove the spell checking there, but I'll just leave it because our focus is on images, right? Okay. So I've got a Word document here, and I'm going to add an image. So real quick, up to, let's see if I can, see if I can remember to do this. No, that's not what I want. Okay, well, I'll do that some other time, I guess. One of these days, I'm going to remember to get the cursor highlighter on here. I'm trying to be a little bit better about. I can hardly see it, so I imagine most folks can't either. Anyway, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Not that any of this text matters. And so I'm going to go up to the Insert tab up in Word, upper left-hand side, and then go down to Pictures. And then you can insert it from this device or stock images or online pictures. Now, when you are looking for online pictures, it'll give you a set. These are found in, looks like Bing is powering this, so it's looking online for a variety of images. This is probably a bank of stock photos that you would find. Microsoft probably has ownership of these. I'm just guessing though. Oh, you can actually check Creative Commons only here. So these are, we'll talk about Creative Commons for sure in a minute, but basically these are images that you can use. So that's a box worth knowing, Creative Commons only. And let's see what other ones are not Creative Commons. Quite a few more, but I'm going to go back to that. Let's see. All right, so all I did was add this image. And notice it gives me a caption right away underneath it. This photo by unknown author is licensed under CC BY SA. We'll talk more about that shortly. But this is, yeah, it's an okay caption. Let's try another one. I'm going to insert pictures. Let's go to stock images. Let's see what that is. And these are definitely the images that are from Microsoft. They are images that are kind of, they don't really say anything. They're more illustrative. And so there's not really a caption here. The reason for that is probably if I'm thinking on behalf of Microsoft, I'm thinking that, well, these are images that Microsoft owns. They don't really say anything. They don't add any or contribute any sort of content to a work. So we would typically, especially for my classes, we would actually avoid this because we don't really use images for decorative purposes. Although you certainly can for like a cover of a report or what have you. Um, but yeah, you can see like hands being raised, hands holding, people walking on the street. But they're not specific. They're very generic photographs. So I tend to avoid those. If I need to put an image to break up, or if I needed some sort of element to break up the text and kind of give some sort of treatment, I might make sure that the image, I would definitely, if an image is called for, I would use that. Otherwise, there are different ways we could break up the text a little bit, like say a block quote or headings are always good, lists perhaps, but usually more text-based treatments would be sufficient. But back to images. Okay, so we covered, if I'm looking at Word, we looked at the online pictures. Let's look at one more example. I'm going to show you, I want to go to some pictures that are not Creative Commons licensed. So I'm going to uncheck that. Now I'm going to go to, maybe this is one. And this should hopefully have a, no, that one doesn't have a caption either. Okay. And let's try one last time. Let's go to books. Creative Commons. That one did not have a caption, which is surprising. Okay, I'm going to try one last one and then move on. I'm not even going to keep it in there anyway. I'm more interested in seeing how it added a caption to that. Okay. But let's go, and I'm going to go ahead and insert an image from my own desktop. I'll use an image that I have created so I can show you how to. Oh, here's one that's Creative Commons licensed. Let's do this typewriter here. So I'll do a typewriter. That's my grandfather's old Royal. Thing's about 300 pounds. It sits on my desk behind the screen here. Okay, so I've added the image, and you can went a little too fast. This is sort of kind of operate on muscle memory here. But you can see these little bars down here. You can resize it that way, just dragging those, getting those in place. Now, what I will often see when students submit a work with images in it, I'll get something that looks a little bit like this, where, if it's not the focus of the class, I don't typically worry about it. But usually by the time, say if early on a student will add an image, um, and it'll look something like this, and then we'll cover how to work with this. But you do see this a bit, and so what we go over is something a little bit like this. We have this little box up here. This is our text wrap. And there's a few things here, pretty self-explanatory, not really self-explanatory unless you know what you're looking at, I guess, but you can see some of the options here and go through them. In line with the text is where we're at now. Here we have one where it wraps the image around wraps the text around the image. Now look at what happens when I move this. Okay, so you get a little bit of some interesting things happening here. Worth noting that the text here is justified, so you're going to get these gaps in between the words, and but on the other hand, you have these real nice margins, padding around the image here, so that's pretty cool. However, it's important, maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but it's really important to be thinking about, not to compromise the readability of the document, especially for the sake of an image, let alone a decorative image like this. So I tend to place it either on the right or the left-hand side, lining it up with the text somewhat. I'm going to add a caption in a moment. You'll see what chaos ensues there. But be thinking about the reader, especially for those of us who read, English. We're reading from the left to the right. Okay, so what I'm doing here by adding an image on the left hand side here, what I'm doing is, it's going to start out fairly smooth, but then the reader's going to have to jump over to the left hand side. So that might be a bit of a distraction. Maybe not. For me, it would definitely. So I might start to play around with this, but the image is getting so small. But I might do something a little like that, just to get things, at the end of a paragraph, but that image is so small now it doesn't even make it worth it. So let's bring it back up. I'm going to move it over to the left here, and you can see that sort of green line indicating that, okay, we're all lined up, stop, right? So let's leave the image there, but let's go back. I'm going to just put it in the random place here. You can kind of see where this would be really difficult, especially when you have these little chunks of text. Don't often see it, but see it often enough. Here's one that's a little bit tighter, so looks like the padding is brought in a little bit more. This it looks like you can see this arc. If this were a round image, it might be a little bit different. In fact, let's see if I can crop this. Crop it. Let's see if I can style it. I'm going to put a round oval on here just for the sake of demonstration. So you can see now we have a round image. Now if I go back to the text wrap, it's going to still stick to those rectangular borders that kind of encapsulate that oval. But if I go to the tight wrapping, it's going to bring it in a little bit closer. And this will, I'm not sure what that one does, but okay, so here is where top and bottom, so it's going to clear out all of the text from either side of the image. Can be useful. This shadow is part of the style, by the way. This will make the text go over the image, completely obscuring the image. I'm not sure why that would be useful, but there it is. And here is where it passes behind the image without any sort of wrap whatsoever. Let's go back to, let's remove the style if I can. Okay, we'll add that. I don't really like just going to go ahead and remove it because I don't want to take the time trying to remember how to do that. Remove the style. Well, again, this is one of those things for the interfaces class. I noticed a few people are looking at Word and Microsoft products, and there is definitely a widespread recognition of, I should say, frustration with some of Microsoft's lack of user empathy, let's call it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap the text around this just for my own sake here. Wrap it around there, bring it to this side so it's not causing confusion. Now, I've got this image in here. It needs to be captioned, okay? So there's a couple things I'm just going to add. I like using my grandfather's old typewriter. Okay, so here we have an image, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on that image. Now again, let's think of this as a professional or technical document where in this image is not decorative or illustrative. So it's not just a decoration, it's not just an image meant to add some sort of mood to a piece, but let's think of it as an actual technical document. So I'm going to insert the caption, and it's going to do a lot of this work for me. It's going to add figure 1, and I'm going to add a period. This, and I can change the label. So if I don't want figure or equation or table, depending on what it is, I can add a new one. I can have it above or below, always below as far as I know of. I've never seen an above caption, but Sure, that could be helpful. New label could be image. Let's do that. That might be worth doing. So if we just do image, image one, Royal Typewriter, source. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so I click OK, and then it goes underneath it. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to reduce the type size so it fits underneath there a little bit nicer, and I'm going to center that just to keep things. And I actually don't even like this anymore, so I'm going to go back to figure one. Royal Typewriter source. I could put author maybe, but this tells you that this is my image. This is where it came from. Let me go real quick to, let's see. Now, I always have to look this up. I've been doing this type of stuff for so long, but I still have to look up the actual style guide. So we're going to do, here's the Royal Typewriter, and I can actually do this as well. So that's just one way of doing it, or just source, author. The other way of doing it, and this is the way that I prefer, actually, image source, old typewriter. And then I would have to, you could actually add the source right in the middle, right in that caption. But because I am working from UWGB and most often working with UWGB students, I'm going to refer to the UWGB library and their sources. And they just have a photograph and the author. Looks a little bit something like this. This. Again, I will explain what this is later on. Okay, so just for the sake of keeping it in there. So you've got the image source and the title and the name followed by the license, and you wouldn't even necessarily need that, because then I would also have a citation at the end of the paper as well, or whatever. For professional writing, let me make sure I'm getting, there's all these different styles I'm trying to, now I'm looking at the Chicago style, which is something we typically use, or I recommend using in any sort of professional or technical writing for sure. So we would definitely go back to the figure one. Figure one, old typewriter. In fact, I would not even have to do that. Taken. And let's see, that must have been about May 2024. If I had more specific times, I would probably add that in here as well. And so, but that's from me. Now, if I were taking that from another source, say like an online image, I would have to do a little bit different there. So the reason, trying to think of why add all this information underneath the caption, especially for Chicago style? Typically because you would not add it in a footnote according to the Chicago manual here. But I want to I'll risk maybe overstepping my bounds here, but at least as a professional, as long as it sticks to the preferred style of the organization that you're writing on behalf of, you're usually pretty good. So that's really important. It's also a lot of reason why I don't spend a whole lot of time keeping track of all these different styles, because ultimately it all depends on who you're writing on behalf of or writing for and what their needs are. So yeah, it's still a chore to try to remember all of this stuff, and I only mention it because if it seems like busy work, it often is. But it's important to make sure you get that right and give attribution. That's the most important thing. All right, back to images. Let's try another example, and I'm going to, based on this Chicago style, I'm going to go over to Wikimedia Commons, and that is like wiki as Wikipedia, Wiki, Wikimedia Commons, and I'll bring that over here. And so here is a great resource for finding images that are free to use. I believe last time I checked, all of the images on here are licensed and are Creative Commons license, which means that you have sort of expanded rights. One second. All right, not to get too bogged down in the weeds of copyright. You could probably there are probably streams and podcasts dedicated to nothing but. Real quick, copyright basically preserves the rights of the producer of a piece of work, image, painting, written work. It gives them the rights to of ownership, and so they can say what cannot be, what it cannot can and cannot be used for. Now, oftentimes that's fairly limited. Without my express permission, you can't use this. Um, if that work is owned by, say, a publisher, I imagine that becomes even more complicated. Um, for with Creative Commons licenses, basically what it's saying is this image is copyrighted or this work is copyrighted. However, as the owner or producer of this work, I grant these additional rights. And so if I look at, let's take Purple Sea Urchin here. It's actually probably the nicest cover image I've ever seen on Wikimedia Commons. You know, here we have this image, and this page is currently protected and okay, whatever. Um, let's say use this file, right? Use it on a wiki, and you can see here's the file. Here's the date, and let's see information. Oops, not quite. Information about reusing. No, use this file on the web. All right. So if you can see this, let's make this a little bit bigger. We have the URL here, and we have the attribution. Now this is really nice because if I'm going to add this to a caption, I can just, it helps to have this information. But you can say here's the photographer, Diego Delso, Creative Commons, BYSA via Wikimedia Commons. So what this means is CC Creative License by, so that means you have to give attribution. All Creative Commons licenses have, I believe, yeah, pretty sure you have to give attribution no matter what. Public domain is something different, and we'll get into that in a moment. SA means it's share alike. So if I were to take this image of a purple urchin, put it into my file, into my document, I would have to enable anyone else who comes along and reads that document. They can also take that image and use it as long as they also agree to share alike. So again, if I was the photographer, if I'm Diego Delso, this is the photographer saying, I freely offer, almost freely offer this image for use. so long as I continue to be given credit for that image. And anyone who uses that image from, so you can think of, if I were to use this image and if someone else were to see my work and then also use that image, they would have to do that same thing. So again, it sort of extends control. It expands it in one sense and extends it so that, countless people could use this image, all giving credit to this author. And it's a great way of sort of publishing your work, distributing it, even if it doesn't reap the benefits of compensation or whatever. So here's the attribution. I'm going to go ahead. I could copy this down here, or I could also just copy this as well. I can embed the file that way. I'm going to close it. I'm going to save this image, download all sizes, and just download this small one here. Download it to the folder. Close that. Let's say I'm going to replace, right click, change picture from a file, and go to downloads. There's my purple urchin. Okay, so now this is a common issue with Word, and it drives me insane because for whatever reason, even though the caption is placed underneath an image, it is not directly connected. So if I move this image, if I change it in any way, that caption remains the same, which is absolutely aggravating. Um, but anyway, here's the image. I'm going to use the same. In fact, if I were to create another caption, it would just create another one on top of it. So something to be aware of. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Let's create a new one. Image caption. And go back to what it was before. And I'm going to just paste that in there. Oh. Let's go back. So what it did was copied. Can I do this? Okay. Think we're good. Well, it still pastes the URL in there, but that's okay because that would be appropriate to Chicago. But because I don't like the way it looks, I'm going to add a link in there. So that's, and then I would add like an entry in the works cited afterwards. All right, so that's my caption, and that's how to add one. Again, it's usually something I don't worry about until the very end, and then I'm going to add that in there, and I don't have to worry about this moving around. Now, for students, this is can be aggravating, especially when you upload it to Canvas or whatever your LMS is, and it ends up creating more havoc. The ideal situation would be to convert it into a PDF, and that preserves the integrity of the document, make sure it doesn't move. But those are tools that a lot of us don't have access to. I do, but most people do not. Anyway, so that's how to use images now, or how to place them in a Word document. There are some additional things here, like you could arrange it. If you had several images, I could manipulate the placement of that. Let's see if I were to, but this is getting it more decorative, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time. Again, you can kind of see the word wrap causing more issues. Now, if I were to make it so that it goes around, Um, you can, it's worth playing around with just to have mastery. And that's not crazy. Anyway, if this were more of a design piece, that might be an issue. But for professional and technical documents, we're not really worried about that. So this is my grandfather's purple urchin. One thing I did not cover, whenever you're using images in a professional or technical document, again, it's usually for a functional purpose, usually to illustrate something, some sort of concept or subject that you're trying to discuss. And sometimes images are just helpful, if not necessary. This also works with tables and charts. So if you're referring to those, you need to add your reference. So see figure 1, right? That's really important and it is often forgotten. But this helps connect the image to the specific passage of writing that you want that image to speak to. Otherwise, the image is just floating around there, could be interpreted as, again, a decoration and not as functional. So it's important to have that on there. Okay. All right. Let's see where we're at. Okay. I have a meeting in about 20 minutes. So I apologize for, let's see, covered how to added it into Word, got to Wikimedia Commons, Markdown. This is an interesting one. So I'm going to stay on this page because I'm going to need it. So I'm still on my purple urchin page. And I'm going to go to, what was it? Oh, wait, stack edit. I'm going to go to stack edit. We're going to, let's first see if there's any, let's go to the welcome files. Maybe there's something in here. Now, full disclosure, I'm coming at this almost in reverse. Like I could probably almost certainly embed an image using HTML. Say if I'm making a website, I remember that syntax better than I do Markdown, which is a little bit different. And if I'm scrolling down here looking at all of the Markdown, I actually do not see anything regarding images. Some great diagrams, though. That's really cool. Yeah, I wish. I'm not sure I would teach a class on Markdown, but it is pretty cool. Anyway, let's do another. Let's do another file. Working with images. Call it that. Now, here we have an easy way. It just adds. You can add an image. And it says provide a URL for the image. And let's see what that does. If I go back to that Wikimedia Commons page and it says use this file on the web, I can get the file URL right there. Just copy that, paste it in, and hit OK. And it adds the image. Now, that said, that's kind of, I wouldn't quite call it cheating. I certainly work smarter, not necessarily faster, I guess, whatever. But what it does is I can't now see the syntax. And that's kind of what I wanted to show. And it's really hard to see. So I'm going to copy that. So enter just, you can kind of see this a little bit better. I'll make it bigify it. Close that. So there's an exclamation point followed by square brackets. Enter the image description here. Let's say, behold the purple urchin. All right. And then that closes off the square brackets, and then followed by a parentheses with the URL. Okay. And so basically what Markdown or an HTML document for that matter is going to be looking for is an online version of that image. So it's going to be pulling directly from that website. Now, where some of the problems come in, say, is if you're trying to use an image from your own computer, it could be running into issues where it's not doesn't have access to the computer, right? So, especially for assignments, I always recommend, you know, remind students who are not working with a website, for example, okay, well, you have to embed the URL and pull it from a site that provides access to that image. Okay, which is what is happening here. Because Wikimedia Commons is essentially a library of all sorts of media types, these images are always available. Now, if Wikimedia Commons were to go down, that image would not be that image would not show up because that link has been severed. However, in this case, we are we're able to use it. Now, for a website, you would actually upload the image to the server where that website is being stored. So, for example, if you have a WordPress site, like for our technical and professional writing course, what we'll do is you can upload the image, and that image is stored on the WordPress server. Okay, so it's no longer stored in on your computer or online. It's actually on its own and preserved in that way. So that is kind of how images work online. Keeping it really simple here. Now with HTML, you can do a lot more as far as changing it. In fact, you can use HTML in Markdown, but I'm not going to go into that. Okay, let's see how we can. All right, so notice that the image description is not showing up here. What is in this is not the caption, it is something else entirely. Okay, so you can see it showing up over there. All right, so Markdown is fairly, again, so let me go back to that. What happened? There we go. Let's go back to working with images. Show me. Okay. Now I'm going to see if I can remember how to do this. Okay, so exclamation point, square bracket. Again, this is not going to show up, but square, close that. And then I'm going to parentheses, paste the URL, and then close that with parentheses. And you can see that it pulls. So notice there was a little bit of a gap there. It's pulling the image, but you can see that it's all good to go. Now, I do not, in Markdown off the top of my head, know how to use captions. I'm sure there's a way, if not in Markdown directly, certainly HTML. You can add all sorts of treatments. You can resize it, this image, and most of it would be in this here. But that is how we use Markdown to embed images. Now, let's see if I can do this. In fact, or maybe I can escape this and see if. Let's go to. All right, so I believe it's image source equals. That's the image. And if I were to, that's showing me the, you know what? Let's try this. I would have to create a whole image document or HTML document, I think, and that maybe we'll do that some other time. But there's the Markdown cheat sheet. Pretty handy. Again, no images in there. So that is one way of adding images in Markdown. Let's talk about something slightly different. Make sure I get to my. All right. I'm going to go over to. Dun, dun. Let's go over to Gemini here. So Gemini is Google's AI assistant. I don't have a paid version of ChatGPT, and I haven't used that in a while. I haven't used Gemini that much either, but I know it creates images, so we'll stick with this. All right. So create an image of a purple urchin at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and it should create something fairly quickly. So now what it's doing here is pulling from all of the images out there of urchins. Okay, so think about again, this is not to encourage the use of AI necessarily, although it's a good tool for doing this. Um, Here's image generation, Gemini. Your imagination is the limit. Yeah, whatever. If what you see doesn't quite match what you had in mind, try adding more details to the prompt. The more specific you are, the better Gemini can create images that reflect your vision. Now, um, basically what I'm doing is trying to describe the image and then testing it to see, trying to get it more closer to what I'm envisioning here, right? So if I go back to, let's see, where is that? If I go back to my image of a purple urchin there's a pretty good likelihood that Gemini, any of these AI tools are going to pull from those Creative Commons licensed images or public domain images. Public domain, by the way, are those images that have expired, where copyright has expired. So, I'm trying to think of an example. Best case, certainly the most media coverage was the original Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie expired from copyright. I think it was like 75 years after the death of the creator or whatever. So, and I'm sure Disney has other things going on there. Quite surprised that they let the copyright lapse on that. But so you could take an image of, in fact, let's see if we can do it. An image of, let's see what happens here. So if I wanted to create an image of Mickey Mouse, let's see what Gemini. Sure, here's an image of Mickey Mouse. Really? Or maybe it's going to send me. Okay, so it'll send me to Getty Images. Okay. So images that are probably provided for by Walt Disney, and I would be willing to bet, yeah, to use this image would be about $400. So you can start to see why you might be thinking, okay, why would I pay for that image when I can create it? Well, a lot of rails are being added to AI as they're being developed. Um, Obviously, in this case, it's Gemini's giving me a link to the Getty Images site. Getty Images, by the way, I believe still in litigation with OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, because those stock photos may or may not have been used. I'm not quite sure about the case, but a lot of litigation, and so there's always a lot of concern about, okay, can I use this image or not? And here is clearly Google is saying, okay, we're not going to even cross Disney. This would be not a good idea on our part. So let's see if they do an image of Steamboat Willie, and let's see. I would like you, let's see, create an image of Steamboat Willie flying a, let's lean all in now. I was going to say have it piloting a Star Wars, but that might be pushing it. All right, so Steamboat Willie not being in copyright anymore. Let's see what this image looks like. Taking its time, consulting with lawyers. And here we go. So, okay, I was expecting it to be in the black and white, but here we have this weird sort of Donald Duck thing happening. Now, if it were me, I would never use this image anyway. It's way too close of a resemblance to Disney characters, right? There's some weird, it's a little bit of like the eyes are a little bit different. They're in some other kind of, I can't remember the name of that style, but that weird look. Um, but yeah, that is so you can create these images. Now, let's just ask, how do I cite images you make? Because we always have to direct proper attribution, image created by Gemini Advanced Google AI. Okay, you can also add details like the date and brief description. Image of Steamboat Willie flying an airplane created by Gemini Advanced. Key point here again is that attribution is provided. I did not create this work. I didn't sit down at my computer or my table and spend hours creating this image. I asked AI to do it. And I think this is really important, especially as we figure out how to do these things properly, ethically, and legally, making sure that attribution is provided. Now, what makes things interesting is that image copied under a Creative Commons license? I don't know. I think that's where we're at right now, is trying to figure out, okay, if this is created by AI, which is using Creative Commons and open access or public domain images, is it automatically transferable? I don't know, right? So maybe that's something I can try to sort out in the meantime. Actually, we have a pretty great think tank here on campus. We're working through some AI questions, and that might be one of the questions that we tackle, because I know, and for obvious reasons, AI is creating all sorts of havoc in our creative fields. So I think that's about it for images. Covered Markdown. Let me try one more thing since I've got a few more minutes. I have to look up, and I'll show you the site here. W3 Schools. Okay, this is my. I rarely use HTML anymore. And thankfully HTML changes very little. So again, you still have that. I was trying to do it before, I couldn't quite remember it. So you have this image source equals, and then you have the alt text, which is great. Okay, so this is the type of thing you would add. For more alt text, I may have covered this before, is for screen readers. So if someone using a screen reader and the page is showing up and an image is important, you want to make sure you have that alt text. If the image is just decorative, it's not entirely necessary. So we have the width and the height here, so I can change the sizing. Okay, and there are all sorts of other ways I could manipulate this image. Let's see if I can. Okay, so that's the image. I'm going to change this. Let's see if my URL is still in there. I do purple urchin, so I'm going to change this. I can run it. And so there it goes. So again, same sort of situation happening here. I've got a few more types. Now this is another reason why I didn't want to do a website. But if I'd have to add all of the header information. Anyway, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So we've got this. I've added the URL, added the alt text. Now if I get rid of this, having the width and the height, which is from the previous image, is making this stretch a little bit. So if I get rid of that and run it, it should go back. But it'll be the huge size. So I might want to go back. Let's try it. Go back again. Wikimedia Commons. That should still be on the front page still. I'm actually going to, let's change this. I'm going to make it smaller. And I could embed it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this. No, actually, it's not going to let me. So actually, I'm going to go back. And I think what I do is width equals 250. Let's try that. There. Okay. See, I do still remember some of this stuff. So just by adding the width, it constrains the entire image. If I were to add, say, um, height, did I spell that right? Height equals 400. If I run that, it's going to stretch it. Yeah, so like that. All right, so that's how and you have all sorts of additional commands that you can throw in there, padding, whether you want it centered, basically anything you can do with Markdown, can do a little bit more with HTML. I mean, it's connection is baked right into the name. So I think that's about it as far as images go. The important thing is making sure you attribute the image properly, even if it's your own image. Make sure you do that because what's preventing someone else from taking your image, right? So we didn't talk too much about Creative Commons. We'll save that for another time. But this is really the basics. When it comes to adding images to Word, can be a little challenging. Making sure you have the captions in there, making sure the spacing is right. So again, think about ultimately, especially when it comes to your technical and professional writing, being mindful of the reader. What is going to make it easiest for them to read? What is most important information? And even starting from the ground, is the image necessary? If it is, say you've got a chart or a graph that illustrates some data that you're working with, that's pretty important. You know, it's easier for us, at least for me, to look at a pie chart or a bar graph and see what is being said through numerical data, right? Images like this, for example, they could be providing some sort of mental picture, could provide an anchor. So if you're talking about purple urchins, it may be helpful to know what you're referring to. You know, when it comes to AI images, let's get back to that. You know, there's thinking of this as a toy. You know, this is a great way to create an image, and without having to pay for it. But you know, there should be. This is an image of an urchin that, in this situation, that does not actually exist. Let's assume that it does not actually exist out there in the world. So you are fabricating information, or actually say Gemini or Google is fabricating this information through combining 1,000 or more images of urchins and sort of positioning it in a certain way, making it purple. I could say um, make an image of a plaid urchin. Let's see if that works. And hopefully this will illustrate what I'm trying to say here is, just because AI can produce it doesn't mean it actually exists or should be used. If you have an image and it should be only illustrative or only decoration, you should also make sure that you cite it, right? Not quite plaid, more, more plaid, like a Scottish tartan. Now I'm starting to get belligerent with my AI. I'm in trouble. Class must have just gotten out. All right, and let's see what this works, and then I am done. I have to run off to a meeting, so yeah, whatever. Not quite what I was thinking of, but anyway, at this point, I would probably just open up Photoshop, find a picture of an urchin, slap a plaid pattern on top of it, and would be good to go. So hopefully this covered some things that were useful. Yeah. All right. Y'all have a good week.